You are listening to the Spactastic Mysteries podcast. We are continuing Anna Gale Lyne's second novel in the Jaguar and Peacock series, Without Clearance. Colonel Jessa Masters, a fearless and seasoned federal agent for the Intergalactic Intelligence Bureau, IIB, commands the SpaceVessel Liberty with unparalleled precision. Alongside her partner and husband, Nate Masters, a skilled investigator with a sharp intellect, she has faced some of the galaxy's most dangerous criminals. But nothing could prepare them for their next mission, a personal one. When a fellow federal agent is found brutally murdered aboard the Liberty, the crime scene is not just a professional setback, it's a chilling threat that hits too close to home. As Jessa and Nate dig deeper, they uncover clues that suggest this murder is no random act of violence. It's part of a decades-old vendetta, a sinister plot aimed at dismantling Jessa's entire family. Without Clearance is a high-stakes, action-packed space thriller filled with twists, conspiracies, and a powerful tale of love and loyalty in the face of overwhelming danger. This is episode 16, The Conclusion. If you have not subscribed, do so now, and hit the bell to be notified of new episodes.
Acacia, I'm here just as you requested, I called out as I walked in the chapel at exactly 1,500 hours. My 9mm at my side. Patting my stomach, I felt the bulge of the bulletproof vest under my coveralls. At least the jacket would reduce the baby's chances of being harmed. I crept up the aisle, searching from one side to the other. I know about the will. I know that your father left the four of you a ton of money. I moved up several more rows when I heard a gun cock. One shot rang out. I took cover in one of the rows, kneeling down. I know that you have to kill my family to get it. I lifted my head to see if I could find Acacia's location. Two more shots pounded in quick succession like firecrackers on the 4th of July. I only have to kill one of you. You should feel honored that I chose you. I could have chose that Secret Service mother of yours, but she wouldn't be quite the challenge you are. I raked the room from my bent position on the floor, again trying to find Acacia. Sweeping the room for what must have been the 5th time, I noticed movement behind the altar. What about Nate Masters? Why did you choose to kill him? I cocked my gun, aiming it slightly above the back of the pew in front of me in the direction of the altar. I squeezed the trigger, sending a bullet flying in Acacia's direction. I was an excellent marksperson, but if I wanted to stop her, I had to move closer. He's part of you. He had to die by association, came Acacia's response. Not a hint of emotion in it. I heard another shot, then another, then another. She shot 6 times. She would need to reload. Taking advantage of the situation, I inched my way past a few more rows. And Brooklyn Curzon? Why did she have to die? I needed to get even closer. Before she could shoot again, I fired 2 more times, leaving me with 3 more bullets in the chamber. Looking up from my location, I saw Acacia holding her shoulder. Blood on her hand. Nate stood slightly behind Acacia. Weapon pointed to her back. She got in my way, Acacia answered. With her arm that had been shot, she raised her gun and continued to take shots at me. With every shot, I ducked in one of the rows. And in every moment of silence, I crept closer toward her. Row by row until I finally saw Colin and a large number of agents gathering behind Nate. Drop the gun, I ordered her, moving into plain sight. My gun aimed at her chest. You are surrounded. Nate, Colin and the other agents cocked their weapons. She glanced around her, then darted. I lunged forward, tackling her to the ground. The gun dropped to the floor. We both grabbed for it. We struggled for it before the gun discharged, piercing me in the arm. One of the places that the bulletproof vest didn't cover. Oh, how it stung as the bullet entered my body. At that moment, my entire life paraded in front of my eyes. My father's cruel words. My days at the academy. My marriage to Ben. Being pregnant with Reggie. The car crash. Learning to walk again. Falling in love with Nate over case files while being on bed rest. Marrying Nate. standing up to my father. Graham asking Sabrina Stetson out at our wedding. My friendship with Brooklyn Curzon. My rendezvous with Nate a few weeks ago in D.C. when he was teaching at that workshop. Finding out I was pregnant with twin girls while I was there. That Jeremy was Brooklyn Curzon and Nate's love child. I remembered it all. Nate rushed to my side as Colin and several other agents grabbed Acacia, handcuffing her. I heard Colin read Acacia her rights as he and several agents ushered her out the doors of the chapel. "Let's get you to the hospital, Peek," Nate said in a soothing tone, helping me stand. I looked at my arm and then at Nate. My lips inched into a smile. "I remember everything, Jag. Everything," I cried, sliding my arm around Nate's shoulder. "I remember our wedding, not from the video or you telling me, but I remember it, the way I felt, what you said, what I said." He led me out the doors of the chapel and down the hallway to the travel tram. "Let me get you to the hospital, and you can tell me all about it." "I remember everything," I continued ranting as he assisted me onto the travel tram. "I remember our rendezvous in D.C. a few weeks ago. I remember that Remy is your child, your biological child with Brooklyn Curzon." Suddenly, I felt woozy. I clutched onto the travel tram railing to keep myself from falling. As I did, my head spun as if I were on a Ferris wheel that wouldn't stop. "The baby," I uttered as I shielded my stomach before everything darkened around me. I felt my legs weaken, buckling under me. My body went limp, and I fell to the ground. "The baby. The baby," I screamed, sitting straight up in my hospital bed. My nightmare still reeling in my head. I dreamed that Nate and I were having a picnic near a river in a wooded area. I was rocking my newborn baby wrapped in a pink blanket. A second later, the dream shifted. The baby, now older, crawled toward the river. My heart pounded a million beats a minute. I blinked my eyes to focus on where I was, shielding my eyes from the bright lights with my hand. I was in a bed. Tugging the wire connected to my arm, I realized that I was hooked up to a Dian monitor. I looked around the room. I noticed the empty bed to my right and the four-pole to my left and the sink with a cabinet above it in the corner. Why was I in the hospital? Was I hurt? I shifted in my bed, craning my head to search the open doors that led to the hallway for Dr. Manning, Nate, anyone to tell me what was going on. I felt the twinge in my right arm. I considered the sling that my arm was nestled into. Oh yeah, the shootout in the chapel. All the details of the event flooded back to me. My eyes fell upon Nate, who was asleep in the chair next to my bed. He must have dozed off. I reached over and traced his jaw line with my finger. I bent forward, kissed his cheek, caressing his face with my hand. When I tried to remove my hand, he grabbed it. "Peacock," he inquired in a low voice. He turned his head to face me. "Are you okay? Dr. Manning says that with rest, your arm will be as good as new." He avoided my gaze, straightening his coveralls. What wasn't he telling me? What are you not telling me? How's the baby? He looked as if he'd been slapped. The blood drained from his face. He came and sat down beside me on the bed, taking my hands in his. The incredibly sad look in his eyes made tears well up in my own. In the most tender voice, he said, "We lost the baby." My heart sank. My body numbed. This couldn't be happening again. This had to be a bad dream. "Wake up, Jessa. Wake up." When I didn't seem to snap out of it, I took a deep breath, fighting back the tears that were hot behind my eyes. "Not again," I whispered in a hoarse voice. What did I do to deserve losing this many children? He brushed away the stray locks of hair that had migrated in front of my eyes. "It's not your fault. The CPM 203 in your system caused you to miscarry Abigail." A smile spread across my face. I threw my head back on the pillow, laughing. Abigail. He was referring to Abigail. Lifting my head off the pillow, I met Nate's horrified, somewhat haunting, gaze. "You think losing Abigail is funny," he thundered, tossing my hands onto the bed as if they were a pan that was too hot to handle. Losing Abigail hurt me very much. It cut me to the core. And all you can do is laugh? It's not like that. Miscarrying Abigail hurt me too. She left a hole in my heart that no one, not even another child, can fill, I explained, reaching out to touch his shoulder. He moved away from my touch. But when I asked you about the baby, I wasn't referring to Abigail. He studied my face for a moment, probably seeking the answers to all the questions that must have been marching through his mind. Looking unsatisfied with the answers he found, he raised one eyebrow questioningly. If you weren't referring to Abigail, what baby were you referring to? I sighed heavily, then feigned a smile. I had been keeping a secret from you. A big secret. He motioned for me to go on. I twisted my mouth, catching his eye. You remember when I met you in D.C. a few weeks ago? I was feeling a bit sick to my stomach, so I went to see Dr. Richards. What is it? Is something wrong? Are you sick? Nate fired questions at me faster than I could answer them. Concern marked his face. Whatever it is, we will handle it together. She said I was pregnant with twin girls. But there was an emergency on the Liberty, and I had to return before I told you. I observed his face become alarmed, then surprised, and finally settled on curious. What happened to the second baby? I glanced down at my hands, then looked up to see Dr. Manning in the crowd of nurses and doctors in the hallway. Maybe Dr. Manning could explain it better than me. Nate took my jaw in his hand, forcing me to look him straight in the eye. What happened to the second baby? Remember the day I had to run an errand? I went to the hospital because the scene in Dr. Richards' office came back to me. I had Dr. Manning check on the second baby. I glanced down, placing my hand over my stomach. You've known since then that you are still pregnant, he retorted, standing. Didn't you see how much Abigail's death hurt me? Or didn't you care? He folded his arms across his chest and turned his back on me. I didn't tell you because I was afraid of losing this baby too, that if I did, that it would send you over the edge. I moved to the edge of the bed, swinging my legs around so that my feet touched the floor. I thought that if I lost the baby, this baby, that you would lose it again and somehow ruin our mission to stop the Solomos vendetta. I grabbed the edge of the bed, lifting myself off the bed. I kept telling myself that if I didn't tell you, that I was somehow protecting our baby from harm. But why did you tell Colin and Graham before me? Both of them almost spilled your secret during the rescue yesterday, Nate countered, glancing back at me. I didn't tell them. Dr. Manning did, I corrected, putting my hand on his shoulder. If I was going to tell anyone, would have told you first. He grabbed my hand. Colonel Masters, Dr. Manning barked, entering my room, what are you doing out of bed? I removed my hand from Nate's shoulder and spun around. Dr. Manning stood at the foot of my bed, holding my medical quan pad. How's the baby, doctor? Clutching my quan pad to his chest, staring over at me, he replied, I have never seen anything like it. Baby Miracle, as I like to refer to her, should not be alive. Dr. Manning shuffled over to the bed. Pulling back the covers, he gestured for me to get in. The CPM 203 that was in your system caused you to miscarry baby A, Colonel, but baby Miracle survived. After he watched me climb back under the covers, he sat on the edge of the bed. He rolled the Dian monitor I was hooked up to toward him. You rescued Lieutenant Colonel Masters from a travel tram that nearly exploded, Colonel, were shot and fainted in a travel tram, and yet, pressing a few buttons on the machine, baby Miracle survives. A picture of the inside my womb came into view. With his stylus, he motioned toward a shadow on the monitor. And there she is. Alive and doing extremely well. Nate turned around to follow our gaze to the center of our attention. He sat behind me on the bed, grasping my hand. That's my baby. He glanced over at me, smiling. That's our baby. A Jaguar and Peacock original. The doctor quietly stood up and walked out of the room, muttering, take two intelligent people. Show them their unborn baby and watch them turn into simpletons. Nate continued to look at the baby in my womb. He glanced at me periodically. His sad eyes had given way to joy. If his face beamed any brighter, it could have lit up the entire universe. I understand why you kept her a secret. You do? You aren't mad? If I hadn't have been such a jerk, telling you that you were seeing conspiracies, where there, he ventured, gingerly touching my sling, obviously were, you would have told me. He looked at me with a hangdog expression. The sadness returning to his eyes. Can you ever forgive me? Tears slid down his face. I wiped his escaping tears with my thumb. I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you so many times. In the kitchen the other night, in the travel tram, so many times, but I couldn't. He still looked at me. His eyes darkened with pain. Yes, I forgive you. I pressed my forehead against his. Will you forgive me for not telling you sooner? He wrapped his arms around my neck, lifting up his head. He kissed me deeply. Of course, he expressed, rubbing his nose against mine. I can't stay mad at you forever. I'm too fond of the making up process. One kiss led to another kiss and another. I broke away from his kisses, joking, isn't the making up process how we got into this situation in the first place? I glanced over at the monitor. My sweet, little girl. Could she be any more adorable? Look, she has your eyes, I observed, pointing to the screen. I felt the pull on my arm and then winced when it smarted. Nate gave me a sidelong glance. How could you tell? She's only a couple months along. Because a mother knows these things, I replied, smiling over at him. I looked down at my sling, then up at him. What happened after I blacked out? To the Solomos family? Acacia was treated for the same injury as you, and she, Damien and Christina were released into the custody of the IIB agents, where they will be transported to Earth to stand trial, he told me, smiling brightly as he squeezed my hand. But Nicoletta stayed behind. Since she infected Chip with that virus, the IIB agreed to reduce the charges against her, if she helped Major Ryan clean it up. And when faced with the possibility of prison time, Damien, Christina and Nicoletta spilled their guts about Acacia, the will and the vendetta against your family. So much for family loyalty. Speaking of family, I've been wanting to ask you about something. He pinched his eyes together, running his fingers through his hair. You said that you remembered that Jeremy was my child, Brooklyn Curzon's, and my love child. Whatever gave you that idea? Brooklyn told me that Jeremy was your child. That you and she conceived him while you were together, I explained, raising my eyebrow, studying the expression on his face. But you didn't, did you? Not that it matters. I didn't agree to raise Jeremy because she said he was your son. I did it because he is Brooklyn's son. Why would she tell you that? He exclaimed, leaning forward to stroke my cheek with the back of his hand. I didn't even have relations with Brooklyn. We only dated a few weeks. I don't know, but I intend to contact Brooklyn Curzon's lawyer and get to the bottom of this. Even though Jeremy has only been with us a short time, to me, he is family, I declared, putting my hand over my stomach. And I will do anything to protect our family. Just then, I felt the baby kick inside my stomach, letting out a "thoo." Baby Miracle was a strong-willed baby, definitely wanting us to know she existed. Nate looked at me questioningly. His eyes filled with concern. I took his hand and placed it on my abdominal area. I felt Baby Miracle hit my hand again, so I was sure he felt it too. I think Baby Miracle is definitely got the kicking thing down. Maybe she'll follow in her parents' footsteps and knock out the bad guys with that kick. I'm going to be a baby, he stammered, his face flushing with excitement. He leaned over. He touched his lips to mine, kissing me deeply. I think we should name her Elizabeth Rachel. Elizabeth after my grandmother and Rachel after your mother. What do you think? I would be honored to name our daughter Elizabeth Rachel. I love you, Jag. I love you, Peak. Resting his ear on my stomach, he added, and you, Elizabeth Rachel.